mechanically in the SEO world, I always like to say doing content for SEO is like being a comedian. So like a comedian works in the material in front of an audience and then refines it with that actual feedback loop. Like a comedian literally can't work on the material without an audience, right? We as content publishers for SEO, we can do what we think is a really good blog post, hit publish, but we actually don't know if it's going to work or how well until we get that feedback loop from Google, right? The impressions, the clicks, the click-through rate from Search Console or ranking data or something like that. So a lot of the reason why I just ship it and then iterate later is because of that mechanics of SEO, right? So like, I always think that you talk about mental models as well. So like probably my biggest operating mental model is 80-20 principle. That I also got from Tim Ferriss years ago. It has literally it's changed the entire way I approach everything, right? So we could talk 80-20 as well, but just for anyone that needs to get caught up, it's not like a lot of people mistake what they think the 80-20 principle is. It's not the idea of going, we're going to spend 80% of time here and 20% on other things. It's the idea that the inputs are indirectly proportional to the outputs, right? So 20% of your inputs are going to result in 80% of the results or output. And you can combine any two sets of data to get to that, right? In the SEO world, I have some concrete things like lines that I get to and I know we're ready to ship. For example, I like to do a lot of topical analysis on content with a tool called Content Aced, which is kind of a newer tool, but it analyzes your content against a keyword and tells you topical gaps, essentially, right? So if we run that through the tool and it gets a D, we're not done yet, right? It's just the tool is telling you we're not done. But if I run it and we're getting a B or an A, and I kind of look at it as a human, I'm like, yeah, I think we've got like 80% of the topics we need to account for in this blog post. Then we're done. Then I'm like, let's publish, see how it goes. So what I'm thinking about is it's going to be another 5 hours, hypothetically, for some content person to have to add in the last remaining 20% of topics. That 5 hours is not important enough to like spend the time now. What I'd rather do is publish in Google, see if it's good enough.
Right. You might rank number one with a B plus, and like you might as well see that and move on to the next piece before marginally trying to increase the input and the output's the same.
You know, another thing I'm really adamant about with clients is the first sentence of a piece of content. Right. And so when we're doing that for SEO, let's say, I have a client that sells precious metals. So let's say the post is the most valuable pennies, right? I always encourage the client to make the first sentence about that exact topic, because like that kind of anchors the topic for Google and for users, right? So like a lot of clients will make the mistake of going like, why coin collecting is fun and you should do it and blah, blah, blah. Like,
or start with like a cute story or something like that.
Right. The common example, which you've seen probably, is like all the recipe bloggers, right? That tell the full story about their grandma. So that's a whole other topic. But so I'm very, very adamant about having a really good first sentence. So I'll make that sentence like I want that to be perfect, but I'm not going to make every sentence be perfect in the entire piece of content. Right? But let's really nail the sentences that matter, right? So like first sentence, maybe the one thing I'm very adamant about is the structure of what is and definition sentences. So those I'm going to be very, very particular about, right?
Because those might pick up some keyword snippets or something like that.
Exactly, right. So I always look at, though, are we hitting the right mark for that degree of transactional to informational content? And literally like what I usually do is just estimate the percentage of transactional to informational of what I'm seeing in Google. And then I just want my client's website to mirror that same percentage, right? So if I'm seeing product widgets and category pages and ads and like 80% of Google's search result page for a given keyword is transactional, I want my client's piece of content to be 80% transactional. So product widgets, for sale language, buy language, product benefits, like all that kind of stuff. So that's another really, really important thing that I think a lot of people miss. For every blog post, I have certain categories of content. One might be what I call an information list. So that could be benefits of marketing or marketing strategies or types of marketing. Anytime you have that plural noun in the search phrase, that it's telling you the user wants a list of these things. Right? That's why I call it information list. And that's my most go-to content type, because it's what we call listicle, right? But like, I don't like to call it that because that sounds low quality.
It's got a bad connotation. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. It has a kind of negative thing, but if done really well, they come out. I mean, when you look at most content in Google, it's all list format stuff, right? So I always label, you have versus content, right? Like marketing versus advertising. So the reason I label the content type is because that's my first step at getting the client towards having the right structure on the page, right? So if it was marketing strategies and they did the complete guide to marketing, that's a mismatch in content type. The user doesn't want a guide to marketing. They want just a straightforward list of strategies. Conversely, if it's like literally a search for guide to marketing, we don't just want to give a list of strategies. We want to actually make a guide. So getting the right content format's important. There's a great concept of intent gaps, right? I think somebody wrote a post a little while ago and they called it like intent gaps. And another example is in the precious metals world, people think you can buy gold and silver at spot price, which is basically like the lowest possible value for gold and silver, but you can't actually do that. But people go to Google and they search buy silver at spot price, which you can't do. So I had my client create a piece of content called Why You Can't Buy Silver at Spot Price. And they completely destroy it with that piece of content, right? Like they rank well, they get traffic, they even get conversions from that because it creates trust. But the point there is like, who would ever thought a piece of content saying why you can't do this thing that you just Googled is actually going to outperform everything else, right? But it's this weird intent gap. So it's just very fascinating how you can't always rank with a literal search. Might make you think you can rank. So I always say, like, let the keywords dictate your structure, right? So like whenever I'm helping clients build out content or like stuff like that, it's like, let's let the keyword landscape dictate what that structure should be. Like just good information architecture. It's like, I feel like another mental model would be, let's let the information architecture reveal itself. Like, let's not try to force it into, like, I feel like a lot of times when I'm doing SEO and keyword research, I'll often say like, my job's not to be creative. My job is to uncover like just the natural existence of keywords and searches that are out there and find that sort of natural synergy that they should sort of fit into, right? Not force it into this like pre-built idea of topic clusters or pillar page or something like that. So that's another big way that I think very differently from many, many people doing SEO out there, right? Again, depends a little on the situation, but in my day-to-day with clients, we don't think about content promotion at all for the most part, right? Like my job as an SEO practitioner, like my philosophy is to, as they say, build really good content, let it get crawled, indexed, found on Google. People will link to that content on their own. So I'm a big fan of passive link acquisition, not this sort of like outreach or like whatever. And the site authority will build on its own. People will share the site. Like if a company is doing real stuff, they're going to be doing hopefully PR, marketing, advertising that should promote them anyways, right? And like sometimes what I'll often try to do is help them layer best practices of SEO into what they're already doing. But for content specifically, once in a while, I might like nudge clients to share things on a channel that's important for them, like LinkedIn or Pinterest or something. But for me personally, I don't really ever go down the path of like large outreach campaigns or whatever. Like I'm a big fan of paid promotion on content in social, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, even Quora, stuff like that. I'm a big fan of that.